Hello everyone. Welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, Diablo anticipated Vega's every move, even predicting that, when cornered, Vega would resort to extreme measures. However, what Diablo didn't expect was that Vega would manage to escape by transferring his essence into an evil dragon beast, slipping past Diablo's Lord of Temptation. Although Diablo had a backup plan, it would have been more complicated to execute. At that critical moment, Mai Furuki stepped forward, using her ultimate skill, Lord of Cosmos, to take Vega into a distant dimensional rift, thus resolving the crisis in the Labyrinth. In this episode, the ultimate Quartet skill, Breakdown Nostalgia, will be revealed, transforming into a brilliant fireworks-like display to bid farewell to Mai Furuki. Vega's final fate will also be uncovered. So, let's get started. With Mai Furuki's disappearance, the unexpected threat also vanished. Diablo, without hesitation, launched an attack on the sealed body of Vega. With the activation of End of World, Vega's body was obliterated in an instant. However, this meant that Vega's powers would transfer to the evil dragon beast that disappeared along with Mai Furuki, allowing Vega to fully resurrect. Diablo clicked his tongue in frustration, realizing that he had made the same mistake as Primordial White. He had previously mocked Testarossa for allowing Vega to escape, but now, facing the same result himself, Diablo knew he had no right to ridicule Testarossa anymore. Diablo's irritation grew, but there was no time to dwell on it. Though Vega's consciousness had been taken to an unknown dimension, the labyrinth's isolated sections still contained numerous Vega cells. If left unchecked, given Vega's ridiculous luck, he might find some way to reabsorb the labyrinth and revive once again. There was no time for sentiment. Diablo quickly snapped Dino out of his daze, reminding him that now was not the time to be caught up in pointless emotions. Diablo's words were true, and Dino understood that completely. Next, Benimaru suggested that they at least prepare some sort of farewell gift for Mai Furuki, making it as grand as possible. With Benimaru's words, everyone sprang into action. Dino hoped that this gesture would make Mai Furuki happy, but deep down, he knew she would probably be upset. She was humble, low-key, and never liked flashy or extravagant things. However, Dino chose to keep this thought to himself rather than voicing it out. Thanks to Benimaru's time-space manipulation, the others returned to the main part of the labyrinth, while the remaining four, Benimaru, Diablo, Zegion, and Dino, continued operating in the isolated section of the labyrinth, which was essentially a subdimensional space. It's important to note that only these four could act in the subspace because the basic requirement for doing so was mastery over time-space manipulation. Additionally, Zegion's time-space manipulation had evolved into time-space domination after absorbing Zelenus. Diablo, determined not to fall behind Michael in controlling time-stop, had long since obtained time-space domination and had even trained Benimaru in mastering time-space manipulation through intense short-term training. It was evident that Dino, with his Lord of Fallen Powers, possessed the skill as well, although the author hadn't provided detailed descriptions of the ability's full extent. Pico and Gracia, by comparison, only had spatial domination, making it difficult for them two to maintain their presence in subspace. At Benimaru's suggestion, they decided to release a grand fireworks display. When Ramiris heard about this, she found the idea childish and unnecessary. After all, the plan was simply to use their most powerful attacks to utterly obliterate the abandoned 30 layers of the labyrinth. Even though Benimaru's thought communication expressed that they couldn't afford to give Vega the slightest chance to resurrect, Ramiris knew their real intention. They just wanted to vent their frustration. Still, Ramiris could understand Dino's feelings of losing a friend, so she ultimately didn't interfere. Ramiris's labyrinth itself was also a subspace, and it existed adjacent to Otherworld. If they left the discarded 30 layers of the labyrinth unattended, it would soon be devoured by the Otherworld and drift away. In subspace, the phase continues to shift, creating unpredictability. Once caught in it, it's impossible to know where one might be transported within the endless dimensions. Velbrine had once been banished to subspace by Feldway, but fortunately, she was able to return thanks to a fragment of Rimura's Lord of Oath and the soul fragments of Rudra, which provided her with the coordinates of various time and space points. That event was a unique instance, a coincidence where chance and miracle overlapped. If one were to leap to the end of time and space or into primordial voids, it would mean eternal loneliness and isolation. Ramiris suggested that if they were going to go through with this, they should do it thoroughly, ensuring that the discarded parts of the labyrinth were completely erased. She also reminded Dino to maintain the barrier properly and hold on to the lifeline, which was essentially the labyrinth's coordinates, to prevent being caught in the chaotic random jumps of subspace. As for Benimaru, Diablo, and Zegion, they all had a strong connection to Rimuru-sama through the soul corridor, symbolizing their deep bonds. Dino sarcastically complained that he didn't have a soul corridor, and made fun of the fragility of his friendships with Pico and Gracia. Pico, however, encouraged him, saying that soul corridors were unnecessary, and true friends didn't need such formalities to believe in each other. Despite Dino's usual laziness, when he decided to work, his efficiency was astonishing. He was the first to leap into subspace, followed by Zegion, and finally Benimaru. Diablo, as expected, was already waiting at the target point. The four of them spread out, forming a perfect tetrahedron, one person per vertex. The structure represented a spatial magic formation, one person at each vertex, 2 people forming an edge, 3 people forming a face, and 4 people creating the space. Positioned at the corners, these 4 powerful individuals prepared to launch their strongest attacks toward the center. This type of formation required at least 4 people to unleash a technique that far surpassed layered magic circles, one built around a spatial magic array. Dino gulped. First, he noticed that both Benimaru and Zegion's magicule levels had surged again. Benimaru had almost reached Diablo's level when he was serious in battle. Dino thought it was absurd how these people always seemed to be evolving in ridiculous ways. Naturally, he figured Rimura must be behind it. Second, the imminent attack they were about to unleash seemed dangerously powerful. Dino began to worry, realizing that the plan was ludicrous. Though initially enthusiastic about participating, he sobered up just before the attack, realizing that they could all be caught in the aftermath. However, the other 3 were entirely absorbed in the moment, their heads full of adrenaline. Diablo, in particular, seemed excited, laughing maniacally as he prepared to unleash his full power. Zegion, also caught up in the intensity, declared that this was the perfect chance to test his limits. Benimaru, despite his worn-out body, assured everyone that he could still complete the attack without a problem. Hearing their overconfident voices through thought communication, Dino was speechless, inwardly remarking that the 3 of them must have something seriously wrong with their heads. But it was too late to back out, and to avoid ruining the atmosphere, Dino held back his sarcastic remarks. It seemed that the Monster Federation had an unusually high number of crazy people. At that moment, Diablo spoke up, suggesting that Dino should take the lead in launching the main attack, with the others synchronizing with his pace. While Diablo, Benimaru, and Zegion were confident in their ability to coordinate flawlessly, they recognized that this might be too much to expect from Dino. So the plan was for Dino to initiate the attack, and the others would follow his rhythm. Dino, relieved at the simplicity of his role, nodded. After all, attempting a seamless combo in such a complicated technique would have been quite challenging. Gathering his power, his 12 wings radiated with dazzling light, the golden and dark silver swords intersecting as he prepared for his ultimate strike, Fallen Crusade. White light and black shadow swept across the sky, intersecting perfectly in the center of the tetrahedron. In that instant, a black flower bloomed from within the formation. Next came Benimaru's strongest technique, Prominence Acceleration, followed by Diablo's End of World Requiem, a devastating magic capable of recreating the destruction of worlds, causing collapses, a combination of abilities, skills, and magic that represented Diablo's most deadly and creative technique. Finally, Zegion unleashed Devastator Storm, a more savage evolution of his Dimension Storm, made even more fearsome by absorbing Zelenis's powers. The 4 unleashed their most powerful techniques, converging at the center of the tetrahedron, overlapping with Dino's skill. The discarded sections of the labyrinth exploded into a dazzling aurora, painting the entire subspace with beautiful colors. It was a dreamlike scene, fitting as a farewell gift, but the power contained within it was the strongest destructive force since the universe's creation. Quartet's skill, break down nostalgia. The tetrahedron focused all the damage internally. Even a slight miscalculation could have resulted in the casters themselves being caught in the destruction. Dino, sensing the gravity of the situation, was understandably terrified. For future generations, this would be remembered as the birth of a legend. Everyone in the command center watching this scene fell silent. The abandoned labyrinth layers disintegrated into ash upon contact with the attack. If this had been used on the surface, the planet would have vanished, and the entire solar system would have been consumed. The combined might of these four upper-level beings far exceeded anyone's expectations, displaying a power even beyond Velgrin's destructive capabilities. In the midst of the silence, someone cheerfully returned. Diablo joyfully remarked how exhilarating the experience had been. Benimaru, equally excited, agreed, noting that despite his body's exhaustion, he felt an unprecedented surge of power during the attack. He added that, unfortunately, there may never be another opportunity to perform this again. Diablo finally understood Carrera's excitement about shattering labyrinth layers, calling it a surprisingly satisfying experience. Zegion, breaking from his usual seriousness, agreed, calling it a rare chance to test the limits of their power. Ramiris, on the other hand, was shaking with fury, rushing to confront them and declaring that such behavior would be strictly forbidden in the future. Meanwhile, Dino, Pico, and Gracia were lounging on the sofa as if nothing had happened, while Shuna quietly served them tea and cakes. With a sweet smile, she softly thanked Dino and the others for their hard work, a gesture so gentle that any man would feel healed. Dino saw it as a reward for his efforts and shamelessly asked for another cup of tea, feeling fully justified in his rest. Benimaru, upon seeing this scene, was stunned and demanded to know why Dino was lying down like that. Dino casually responded that since his job was done, he naturally deserved to rest. Benimaru, growing more irritated, argued that Dino should go home. Dino, shocked, replied that since the battle was over, he considered himself a friend again and therefore, his home should be the Monster Federation. Benimaru grew even more furious at Dino's carefree and shameless attitude. However, Dino quickly rallied Ramiris to his side. Having already made peace with Dino, Ramiris suggested hiring him again if he was willing to keep working. The two even started eating cake together. In the grand scheme, the labyrinth's crisis had been averted, but the world remained in danger, and Rimuru had not yet returned. Despite this, Dino and his group seemed completely detached, as if none of it concerned them. In fact, Dino, Pico, and Gracia were already fighting over the last piece of cake, proving that friendship means nothing when cake was involved. Benimaru, seeing this, finally gave in and asked Shuna to prepare more cakes. After finishing their desserts, Dino and his group agreed to join Benimaru's command. They figured that as long as they stayed on good terms with Shuna's brother, they would remain in Shuna's favor, who controlled the food supply, ensuring a steady stream of cakes. This arrangement seemed far more appealing than working under Ramiris. The final decision was that Dino would temporarily serve under Benimaru, with plans to return to Ramiris once the battle ended. The top priority was to protect the world. Benimaru and the others had no doubt about their eventual victory, firmly believing that Rimuru-sama would return soon, and they vowed to defend the central world until then. Seeing everyone so determined, Dino couldn't help but wonder if perhaps Mai Furuki might also return safely. He had never expected that serious girl to sacrifice herself for others, and the thought weighed heavily on him. Although her actions had helped him, he felt he couldn't repay her. Dino couldn't accept that. Though it was troublesome, he resolved to serve her cake when she returned. To do that, he had to protect the world. Even the lazy Dino knew he had to pull himself together in times like this. The perspective shifted to Mai Furuki, who, along with Vega, was drifting through the dimensional gap in subspace. Having been randomly ejected from Ramiris' labyrinth, Mai Furuki had already lost her positional coordinates. Simply surviving was already a stroke of luck, thanks to her ultimate skill Lord of Cosmos and its power, survivable space automatic adjustment. Unaware of this ability, Mai Furuki silently thanked her luck. Strangely, she suddenly had a strong craving for cake, perhaps because someone had been thinking of her. She was confused as to why cake, of all things, came to mind. After all, in this world, cake was a luxury far beyond her means. Her thoughts wandered back to when she had first been summoned to this unfamiliar world. After joining Yuki Kagurazaka's ranks in the Eastern Empire, Mai Furuki occasionally received sweet potatoes as gifts, and even those felt like a massive reward. But now, remembering how even Yuki had been killed by Jahil, Mai Furuki fell into melancholy. Since the moment Yuki had found her, she had fought to return to her original world. Yet, even now, after gaining extraordinary power, her wish remained unfulfilled. When she first acquired the ultimate skill Lord of Cosmos, Mai Furuki understood that the possibility of returning to her original world was nearly zero. Yes, the opportunity existed, but it was out of her reach. To break through the dimensional barrier, she would need detailed spatial data, immense energy, and complex calculations. If she could manage all that, she wouldn't have ended up in Vega's grasp. Even though she had been captured by Vega, Mai Furuki knew she wouldn't be killed immediately, for reasons she already understood. Seeing Mai Furuki smile, Vega had angrily accused her of plotting an escape, declaring that he wouldn't allow it. Mai Furuki had mockingly looked at him, as if he were a fool, and told him that escaping was impossible. Vega had been confused and then twisted his expression, claiming that once his main body was killed, this current form would inherit the ultimate skill Lord of Evil Dragons. At that point, he would devour Mai Furuki and use her ability, Lord of Cosmos, to teleport back to the central world. By this point, Vega's main body had already been annihilated, and the power of Lord of Evil Dragons, along with his main body's strength, had already transferred to the evil dragon beast. But Vega, unfamiliar with his own powers, hadn't yet realized this. Mai Furuki had smiled, explaining that even if Vega took her Lord of Cosmos, he still wouldn't be able to return to the central world. Shocked and confused, Vega demanded an explanation. Mai Furuki had continued, telling him that to travel through space, he would at least need both his current coordinates and those of his destination. She had asked if Vega had access to such information, pointing out that if he killed her, he would never be able to acquire it. As she explained, traveling between dimensions required vast amounts of data. Even if one knew the destination's coordinates and time axis, there remained the problem of breaking through the dimensional barrier, which varied in strength between different dimensions. Finding the correct exit would require repeated trials. Furthermore, time itself was an issue. Even within the same universe, space was expanding faster than light. The relationship between time and space was far beyond Mai Furuki's understanding. Returning to the exact time and place where her beloved brother was still alive seemed an impossibility. Perhaps a true dragon could manage such an extraordinary feat, but after her desperate, random teleportation, Mai Furuki couldn't even decipher her current location's data. Vega was stunned, realizing that without Mai Furuki's help, no matter what he did, he would never be able to control this ability. He became frantic, unable to deny Mai Furuki's words. If he killed her, he would be trapped here forever. But if he didn't, they would both remain stuck in this space, and he would have to rely on her, which was both humiliating and troublesome. However, with Vega's way of thinking, he would most likely end up devouring Mai Furuki anyway. If she escaped, it would all be over. It was better to seize her power first and slowly figure out a way. Before Vega could come to a conclusion, something unexpected happened. A massive temporal storm suddenly formed in front of them, a force beyond human understanding in subspace. If they were swept into it, survival was uncertain. In a rare moment of agreement, both Vega and Mai Furuki decided to flee the storm. But before they could act, another temporal storm was born, this time centered around Vega himself. Unable to resist the overwhelming force, Vega's grip on Mai Furuki loosened. This was her chance to escape, but she had no time to save herself, as she was quickly swept into another vortex. In the unstoppable torrent of energy, Mai Furuki's consciousness began to fade. She remembered Yuki's words of encouragement, telling her never to give up, but this time it seemed futile. Moments later, she lost consciousness. Meanwhile, after the temporal storm dissipated, Vega was the only one left standing, alive and unharmed. Arrogance returned to him as he boasted that perhaps the storm wasn't as terrifying as it seemed. Because Vega never reflected on his mistakes, he was bound to repeat them. He figured that Mai Furuki, who had been swept into another vortex, had little chance of surviving. He regretted not being able to steal her power in time but wasn't overly concerned. Vega, confident in his luck, believed that surviving the storm once again proved he was untouchable. Yet this was a mistake. When he let go of Mai Furuki, his luck had run out. Vega found himself in an unknown place, surrounded by nothing but void. There was no sky, no ground, no ocean, nothing, not even an up or down. He finally realized the severity of his situation. There was nothing here, and because of that, he didn't know what to do. Even moving didn't seem to change anything. He couldn't tell if he was moving at all. The magicule he released didn't touch anything, and perhaps time itself wasn't even passing. Suddenly, fear surged within him. Vega panicked, screaming in terror and rage, but there was no response. Vega kept shouting that he was the mighty Vega, but all that answered him was a crushing sense of loneliness. Overwhelmed with fear, he unleashed all his power, triggering a massive explosion in the void. But nothing changed. Vega's body, unscathed, quickly regenerated. His immortality, combined with the vast power he gained from absorbing Zelenus, meant he couldn't even kill himself. His complaints turned to laments, and he realized he would remain here forever, alone, in the endless void. Alright, that's all for this video. As you may have noticed, the temporal storm that Vega and Mai Furuki encountered was Seal's doing. The outcome is predictable. Mai Furuki was undoubtedly saved by Seal, while Vega was sent to the ends of time and space. The annoying Vega has finally received his punishment, an eternity of nothingness and solitude. In our next episode, we'll cover the final chapter of TenSura Volume 21, which includes Rimuru and Seal's conversation at the end of space and time and Rimuru's return. Interestingly, this part of the story differs significantly from the web novel, and we'll be doing some analysis comparing the two. The next episode will be just as exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.